Hare Krishna Prabhuji, sorry I'm late. Actually, it starts at 8 o'clock. I wrote 7:45. My apologies.
Okay, okay, sure. Do you want me to share the screen, Jyoti Mataji, or?
Yes, please. And then I can start recording, Prabhuji.
Okay, sure. If it's just going to be hosting administration.
Oh, sorry, 1 second. Yes.
Okay. Okay, everyone can see that?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji, we can.
Okay, sure. So you can start, Hema Mataji and Sailesh Prabhu.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Please accept all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chapter 12, Devotional Service, Bhakti Yoga. Text 1. Arjunuvacha evam satatam yukta ye bhaktastvam paryupashate ye chapi aksharam avyaktam tesam ke yoga vitamaha.
Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested?
Text 2. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha Maya she aveshya mano ye mam nitya yukta upashate shraddhaya parayopetas te me yuktatma yuktatma mataha.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect.
Text 3 and 4. Ye tvam aksharam anirdeshyam avyaktam paryupashate sarvatragam achintyam cha kutastam achalam dhruvam aniyamendriyagramam sarvatra samabuddhaya te prapnuvanti mam e sarvabhuta hite rataha.
But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons, engaged in the welfare of all, at last achieve me.
Text 5. Klesho adhikatarastesham avyakta shakta chetasam avyakta hi gati dukkham dehavabhir avapyate.
For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal features of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied.
Text 6 and 7. Ye tu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matparaha ananye naiva yogena mam tyayanta upashate tesam aham samuddhata mrityu samsara sagara bhavami nachirat partha maya aveshita chetasam.
But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death.
Text 8. Mai evam mana adatsva mai buddhim niveshaya nivashishyasi maya eva ata udvam na samsadhyaha.
Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt.
Text 9. Arhachitam samadatum na shanknoshi mai stiram abhyasa yogena tato mam icham tum dhananjaya.
My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me.
Text 10. Abhyase api asamarthosi mad karma paramo bhava mad artham api karmani kurvan siddhim avapshyasi.
If you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage.
Text 11. Athaitad api ashaktosi kartum mad yogam ashritaha sarva karma phalam tyagam tatha kuru yatatmavam.
If, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated.
Text 12. Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasaja jnanad dhyanam vishishyate dhyanat karma anantaram.
Not take to this practice, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation. And better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action. For by such renunciation, one can attain peace of mind.
Text 13-14. Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankara sama dukha sukha kshama
Santushta
madri nishya maya rupi yoma
Who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me, such a devotee of mine is very dear to me.
Text 15. Yasmanno dvijate loko lokano dvijate chayah harsha marsha bhayo dveg gati gair mukto yasa chame priyaha.
He by whom no one is put into difficulty and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me.
Text 16. Anapeksha suchirtaksha udashino gata vyatha sarvarambha parityagi yo mad bhakta same priyaha.
My devotee who is not dependent on the ordinary course of activities, who is pure, expert, without cares, free from all pains, and not striving for some result, is very dear to me.
Yo na rishyati na dveshti na sochati na kankshati subha shubha parityagi bhakti mam yasame priyaha.
One who neither rejoices nor grieves, who neither laments nor desires, and who renounces both auspicious and inauspicious things, such a devotee is very dear to me.
Text 18-19. Sama sauro cha mitra cha tatha manapamanayoh Sitoshna sukha dukheshu samasanga vivarjitaha. Tulya ninda stutir mauni santushto yena kanachit aniketa stiramatir bhakti mam me priyo naraha.
One who is equal to friends and enemies, who is equipoised in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, who is always free from contaminating association, always silent and satisfied with anything, who doesn't care for any residence, who is fixed in knowledge and who is engaged in devotional service, such a person is very dear to me.
Text 20. Yetu dharmamritam idam yatoktam puryupashate shraddadana matparama bhaktaste ativa me priyaha.
Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me.
Thus, and Bhaktivedanta purport of the 12th chapter at Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of devotional service. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Apologies for any mistakes. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much, Hema Mataji and Shailesh Prabhu. That was really well recited, the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, devotional service. So I'm going to be reciting this particular verse today. It's chapter 12, verses 3 to 4. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I just wanted to check, you can hear me okay?
Yes, Prabhuji, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Yetvaksharam anityam avakyatam paryupashyate sarvatra gamachintyam cha kutastamachalam dhruvam saniyamendriya gramam sarvatra samabudaya te prapunavati mam iva savabhuta ite rataha. Word for word translations and also the translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Here, those who do but aksharam, that which is beyond the perception of the senses, anirdeshyam, indefinite, avyaktam, unmanifested, ayupashate, completely engaged in worshipping, sarvatragam, all pervading, achintyam, inconceivable, cha, also, kutastam, unchanging, achalam, immovable, dhruvam, fixed, saniyama, controlling, indriyagramam, all the senses, sarvatra, everywhere, samabudaya, equally disposed, te, they, apunvanti, achieve, mam, me, eva, certainly, Sarvabhuta hite, for the welfare of all living entities, Rata engaged. Okay, sorry, somebody just unmute themselves. The translation by Prabhupada, but those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Those who do not directly worship the Supreme Godhead Krishna, but who attempt to achieve the same goal by an indirect process, also ultimately achieve the same goal, Shri Krishna. After many births, the man of wisdom seeks refuge in me, knowing that Vasudeva is all. When the person comes to full knowledge after many births, he surrenders unto Lord Krishna. And when approaches the Godhead by the method mentioned in this verse, he has to control the senses, render service to everyone, engage in the welfare of all beings. It is inferred that one has to approach Lord Krishna, otherwise there is no perfect realization. Often there is much penance involved before one fully surrenders unto him. In order to perceive the supersoul within the individual soul, one has to cease essential activities of seeing, hearing, tasting, working, etc. Then one comes to understand that the Supreme Soul is present everywhere. Realizing this, one envies no living entity. He sees no difference between man and animal because he sees soul only, not the outer covering. But for the common man, this method of personal realization is very difficult. So I'll quickly recite the invocation prayers. Om Jnana Timrandasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurimilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Svapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shivashikam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Piye Panchakapa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Charaswami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pashyata Shesatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll read the translation once again. Those who fully worshipped and manifested that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me. Hare Krishna. Thank you everyone for joining in. My name is Krishna Govinda Das. Kindly seek the blessings of all the devotees attending this class. Seek the blessings of my spiritual master, Paticho Swami, and also the blessings of Srila Prabhupada to allow me to speak on favorable topics on the discourse of Sri Bhagavad Gita devotional service. So this particular verse is, or rather Krishna is talking about impersonalism, about how one, if they wanted to take to the process of impersonalism or voidism, it would have to take a very, very long time. So just to break down how we acquire that, I'll just give you a little explanation. So according to the Sankhya philosophy, Krishna and the whole manifestation is consisting of, first of all, Purusha. Purusha is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then Krishna has so many potencies. And of those potencies, there's three prominent ones. The first one is the internal potency, sometimes known as Chitti Shakti. It is always pure, eternal, ever existing. It never gets destroyed. It never gets changed in a way. It's always blissful, as the qualities of Krishna himself. Then there's another quality as well of potency, and that's called the marginal potency. Sometimes the marginal potency is known as the Jiva Shakti, where the living entities reside in. And there's a third energy or potency of the Supreme Lord, and that's called Prakriti, or the external energy, sometimes known as Mahamaya. So you have Krishna, Purusha, and then you have Prakriti and three different potencies. Then after that, you have other sort of portions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in manifestation, you have the three gunas. The three gunas consist of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And then after the three gunas, you have the five gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. And after these five gross elements, you have the 10 senses. First of all, you have the five senses for acquiring knowledge. Those senses are the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. So these are considered, sometimes when you see the analogy of the horse chariot, the driver, the reins of the horses itself. So sometimes these five senses are sometimes recognized as the reins of the horses, along with the five working senses, which are the ears, eyes, sorry, beg your pardon, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, voice and legs, hands and genitals. So these are considered to be the five working senses. So I'll just rephrase that again. The first five senses, which are the organs for acquiring knowledge, is eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. But the five working senses are the voice, legs, hands, genitals, and anus. From these senses, this is where we actually enjoy our sort of, I suppose, sense objects, sense gratification itself. Then on top of that, we have the five sense objects. The five sense objects are the smell, taste, touch, form, and sounds. And this is considered to be in the form of the example of the chariot and the horses. The actual destination are considered to be the five sense objects itself. So you have the reins of the horses, which are the five working senses, and also you have the mind. The mind is also sometimes considered to be one of the senses, and it is also considered to be the actual, the mind is considered to be one of the senses. And the chariot driver itself is also considered to be a sense, but it's in the form of intelligence itself. So within the actual manifestation, there's also another manifestation, which is called the Brahman, the Brahma Jyoti itself. So once again, you have Krishna, Purusha, you have the Prakriti with its many potencies, specifically the three potencies, which is the Jiva Shakti, Chitti Shakti, and the Mahayoga Shakti. And then you have the three gunas, goodness, passion, ignorance, five gross elements. And then you have the 10 senses, five for acquiring knowledge, five for working senses. And then you have the five sense objects. But also you have the Brahma Jyoti. The Brahma Jyoti, according to the Sankhya philosophy, if you can imagine a big circle, and in the middle of that circle is the Brahma Jyoti centered in the middle of it, and half of it, 180 degrees, the bottom half of it is considered to be the material world. And the top half is considered to be the spiritual world. The bottom half is a perfected reflection of the spiritual world itself. Now, in a minute, I'm going to sort of explain why I'm talking about the senses, because on this particular subject, Krishna actually mentions that in order to actually control the various senses and be equally disposed to everyone, such persons engage in the welfare of all at last achieve me. So trying to control the senses is very, very difficult. And later on, I'll explain how you can actually use those senses, not to detach yourself from these senses, but to attach yourself in a way that can be used for devotional services. So just a few weeks ago, I was given a class at the Bhaktivedanta Manor. The topic was your original consciousness is pure Krishna consciousness. And on that particular topic, I mentioned about the four types of devotees. With your permission, I'll just explain those four types of devotees to all of you as well. So there's four types of devotees. The first one is considered to be the Kami or Karma Yoga. The Karmis are actually utilizing their time and energy, but they don't really fully want to surrender to the Supreme Lord. They sometimes surrender the fruitive activities of their work to Krishna, but they don't really have a direct goal or means of attaining spiritual salvation straight away. They want to do things in their own appropriate time and through their own time.
Anh Cậu xin chào.
Hare Krishna, you need to mute yourself. Okay. So so the first one is actually the Karmis. they actually give their fruitive results to Krishna. The next ones are the Gyanis. The Gyanis are considered to be the impersonalists. The Gyanis are the ones who want to learn about the Vedas, want to learn and acquire spiritual welfare through knowledge itself. But the Krishna says many times in the Bhagavad Gita, people are very attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, but they don't really know me in truth, because what they're trying to do is perceive Krishna through knowledge, but you don't really perceive who Krishna is through knowledge. It's only by devotional service that you get to know who Krishna is. Then the third one is the yogis. The yogis become powerful mystics, and they want to dedicate their time meditating on the Supreme Lord, breathing exercises, so forth, just concentrating on the Supreme Lord. But when they do have that mystic power, eventually they tend to become, in a way, transformed in their own personal behavior. Instead of wanting to use that power for Krishna's purposes, they tend to want to become recognized for their ability or their power, their strength that they may have acquired. As we know from certain shastras, it mentions that yogis have the ability to become mystical and change themselves to become very tiny or very large, or disappear or do magical tricks. But unfortunately, these days, that potency isn't as prevalent as it was in the earlier yugas, such as Treta and Dwapara Yuga. And the final ones is the bhaktas. The bhaktas are the ones who are completely dedicating themselves into surrendering to Krishna through the processes as mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. So sometimes one of the words that it's mentioned in the translation is absolute truth. But when I was trying to look for the word-for-word meaning in the translation, it didn't directly have the word absolute truth. The word absolute truth is translated, or rather from the Sanskrit word, Param Satyam. Satyam, as you know, is truth. Param is a supreme. So normally in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, normally it mentions Bhagavan, Uvacha. So we understand the Bhagavan when it's translated as a supreme personality of Godhead. But what is the absolute truth? What does it mean by being truthful? The word absolute truth is defined by three personalities. Does anybody know what those three personalities are? I'll give you a clue. One is Bhagavan. Second one is?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah,
Is it Brahma Jyoti and Paramatma?
No, it's Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan.
And Bhagavan.
Yeah, that's it. So first of all, there's Bhagavan, there's
Yes.
Paramatma, and there's the
Brahman.
Brahman. Yes, thank you so much. So what it is, within, I'll just mute everyone again. So when we understand the Bhagavan has unlimited potency, unlimited sort of capability, but there's 6 prominent potencies that the Supreme Lord has, or qualities. So those 6 qualities are: is full of strength, full of knowledge, full of knowledge or wisdom, famous, is all beautiful, is always attractive, is possessive of all strength, power, of course, and opulence as well. So strength, fame, beauty, wealth, and is fully renounced, and wisdom. So those are the 6 qualities that actually stand out. And if anybody has those 6 qualities to its full degree, they're considered to be Bhagavan. Of course, somebody may have a limited sort of quality of one of those 6 or 2 of those 6, but they wouldn't have it to the full capacity as Bhagavan or Krishna. Even one of the topics I mentioned about the 64 qualities of the Supreme Lord, the 64 qualities of the Supreme Lord, even Narayan, who's considered to be the Supreme Lord, he doesn't have 4 specific qualities which the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna has. So, of course, that's another discussion. I'll talk into that if we have time later on. So, within the 3 aspects of the Absolute Truth, the Bhagavan is the one who has 6 opulences. The next one is Paramatma. Paramatma, from what we understand from chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, is the localized super soul residing in the hearts of every living entities. So the Paramatma is also known as Shiradaksha Vishnu. when Krishna sometimes comes to expand himself into the material world, he expands himself into Shiradaksha Vishnu. And each of us, every living entity, whether it's a plant, animal, bird, tree, human being, we all have the super soul within our heart, known as Shiradaksha Vishnu. Then the final one is the Brahman. Brahman is sometimes recognized as the Brahma Jyoti, or the effulgence of the Supreme Lord. So these three aspects are sometimes given by the analogy of the sun. You normally have the sun, the planet, the sun, the shape, the sun itself. Then you have the sun's surface itself, and then you have the light effulging from the sun itself. So for the first person, for those who are actually the Gyanis, they actually believe in the sunshine itself. They're actually considered to be the preliminary students. They want to recognize that, they want to understand what the shine or the effulgence is of this supreme or this sun planet itself. So they're not interested in the sun, they're not interested in the sun surface itself, but they're interested in the light that emanates from the sun itself. So that is called the primary students, or sometimes known as the Brahman effulgence. The sunshine is represented by the Brahma Jyoti itself. Then you have the sun's surface. On the surface of the sun, this is the next stage where the yogis want to actually come to their particular aspect. And those are actually, or rather the sun surface is recognized as the aspect of Paramatma. Even when you look at the sunshine itself, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, even if hundreds and thousands of suns were to rise in the sky at once, that might resemble the effulgence of the Supreme Person in that universe. So you can imagine hundreds and thousands of sun that emanates itself may resemble part of the effulgence of the Supreme Person. When Krishna shows his universal form to Arjuna, he's explaining that it's so bright that you cannot see with your mundane material eyes, that you need special spiritual eyes to see that Supreme Brahman itself. So first you have the sunshine, which is the Brahman, then you have the sun surface, which is the Paramatma, or it's an analogy, of course, and then you have the sun planet itself. The sun planet, from the analogy, is the Bhagavan, and this is where the bhaktas actually want to go to. They want to actually go to the sun planet. They're not interested in the light that's emanating from the sun. They're not interested in the surface or going on the surface, but they want to be part of that Supreme in this form as the sun itself. So when we talk about this particular absolute truth, when you actually understand, you have the absolute truth in three aspects. So Bhagavan, the Paramatma, and then you also have the Brahman itself. Now here Krishna is actually saying that a lot of people are interested in the Brahma Jyoti, the effulgence of the Supreme Person. They don't really understand that the Supreme Lord himself has a personality. Like all of you, you have the ability to see, hear, touch, taste, smell, so forth. From your senses, you're able to see and do things from the ability of everything that you do, even the legs that you have to be able to walk around, the hands to do dexterous things itself. So why is it that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, people are interested in this Brahma Jyoti? Because they feel that this is the platform where they could just lie as one in uniform with the Supreme Lord. Now, this is not what Krishna really wants. He actually wants people to come to his abode where he could be a friend to his devotee. He could be subservient to that particular devotee. He could be a parent to that devotee. He could be a child to that devotee. He could be a lover to that devotee. So he rather has a relationship with that Supreme or with that devotee. He doesn't want somebody just to have a sleep and slumber because they feel, oh, I just want to lay in peace and that's it. So in this particular purport, Prabhupada mentions quite a few times, of the many births, the man of wisdom seeks refuge in me, knowing that all Vasudeva is. So then further on, he actually mentions something about birth and death. Does anybody know a particular verse from the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna specifically says, after many births and deaths, he who is actually knowledge? I've almost given you the clue. Okay, I'll just share it with all of you. It's from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 19. Bahunam jamanam mante jnana vamam prapajyate vasudeva saramiti samatma sudulabha. After many births and deaths, he was actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So here Krishna is actually explaining that not just anybody can actually come to Krishna himself. We've actually taken many, many births, life after life after life. I mean, practically since, well, creation has come and gone, millions and millions of times, and yet we're still not at Krishna's eternal abode. So somewhere along the line, we must have made so many sinful reactions to keep being born in this repeated birth of life and death in this wheel of samsara. So it is our duty to come to that knowledge, to come to that transcendental knowledge where we can understand who Krishna is and go back to the Supreme Lord. And then further, Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Manushrayam sahasreshu kaschir yajati visitaye yatatamapi siddhanam kaschir mama veti tatvata. This is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 3. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. Of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows main truth. So once again, we can see how many different walks of life people are trying to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, either through as a karmi, either through as a jnani, as a yogi. But the highest of them all is bhaktas. But even then, why do people want to believe in the Supreme Lord through different aspects if Krishna is actually explaining everything? When you look at Buddhism, those based on atheism, their actually belief is that God does not have any features at all. They don't really actually believe in God, but they believe in this nirvana state and this heavenly state itself. So Prabhupada actually says that this is really not a very good philosophy. They're almost saying that this personality has no features, has no form, has no eyes, no ears or anything at all. Now, can you imagine if you see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when you see Krishna's paintings, when you see the beautiful form of the Lord Shri Radha Gokulananda or any deity on the altar, whether it's at your home, Ladhu Gopal, any sort of stories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's not like a transient light that's been described, but it's actually explaining the Supreme Personality of Godhead in detail, his beauty, his fame, his pastimes, his features. You know, when the gopis are attracted to the Supreme Lord, not of some light, some effulgence, but they're attracted to Krishna's features. They're attracted to listening to his flute. They're attracted to his beautiful lips, his eyes, lotus eyes, you know, the way he moves, the way he dances. So there's an attraction for a personality, just like we have a personality. So similarly, there has to be a supreme being who has a personality as well. So this is very important to understand. Now, when I was speaking earlier on, I know I did mention quite a lot about the 10 senses, the current senses, the working senses. So now, if you were to detach yourself from those, it would be very difficult. But there's a great personality who actually used all his senses for Krishna's pleasure. This wonderful king from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Does anybody know who that is? I'll give you a clue. He was chased by Durvasha Muni. Well, not chased by Durvasha Muni. He was cursed.
Ambarish Maharaj. Ambarish
Yeah,
Maharaj.
that's good. Thank you so much. So Ambarish Maharaj. Now, can somebody give me examples of the senses Ambarish Maharaj used for Krishna service?
He used to smell flowers.
Yes, Palika, yeah. He used his nose for smelling flowers. What other senses did he use for?
Bow down to pay his obeisances to the whole body.
Yeah, very good, Palika. So
And the eyes also, of course, he was, seeing the deities. I mean, Krishna's deities. So this is all the senses he used to. His full senses were used to serve Krishna.
very good. Thank you so much, Palika Mataji. So yes, he used his mind to meditate on the Supreme Lord. He used his words to glorify the Supreme Lord, And he used his ears, of course, as one of the most important things, Shravanam, Kirtan, and Vishnu, to hearing the words spoken by Lord Krishna himself. He used his hands to cleanse the temple floor of the Supreme Lord. Then he used his eyes to take darshan of the Supreme Form of the Lord. He used his nose to smell the beautiful flowers offered to the Supreme Lord. And he, with his head, he used to bow down to the Lord at the temple. So you can see he used all his senses in serving Krishna. So can you imagine if he was to detach himself from using any of those senses, what would he do? He'd be completely lost, and we would all be lost. We would all be lost. Would we be just talking to a light or take a darshan of a light, effulgent light? It just doesn't look right at all. In fact, anything that's on Krishna, whether it's his jewelry, whether it's garland, his clothing, actually it's been beautified by the Supreme Lord himself. On its own, it may have some opulence or some attraction, but it's actually magnified when it's actually placed on the Supreme Lord himself. So this is actually showing you that when we use our senses for Krishna, all our senses in Krishna service, it allows you to become more and more spiritualized, more purified, more sort of connected to the Supreme Lord himself. Now, when you think about the Supreme Lord, it's created this beautiful universe with its beautiful lakes, beautiful mountains, beautiful landscapes, beautiful animals, birds, trees, you name it, flowers, all kind of variety of flowers. There's nothing which is actually different. It's all a variety of variegatedness. And even the form of human beings, there's different types of humans from different parts of the world. We all have some attraction through there. But why would he create all this if there was no sort of personality for the end of our, or rather, a personality that we could all pray to ultimately? We shouldn't be just praying to something which is just a pure form of light itself. So, as you know, there's 8,400,000 species of light, but can you believe that God created all these just for our pleasures? And at the end of our life, we're just wanting to just emerge into the Brahmajyoti, just in a slumber sleep, but we don't have any sort of awareness of anything around us. Then we actually feel, well, there must be more to life than this itself. So even when you look at the story of Govardhan Hill, when you see the Govardhan Hill from a material perspective, it looks all material, but it's actually a spiritual personality. So when Lord Krishna told the inhabitants of Vrindavan, why don't you offer your offerings to Govardhan instead of Indra? And of course, that's a beautiful story itself. And ultimately, what did Govardhan Hill do? It took out a manifestation of a personality and it started consuming all the offerings. And if you read the wonderful stories in the Bhagavatam, it actually mentioned about his eyes open up, his mouth opened up, he started eating all the offerings and he couldn't contain himself itself. Such a beautiful pastime, when you see the picture of it with Govardhan Hill eating as well with his mouth open. So it shows you that even the mountain, it may be in one way, one particular shape, but it's also got a personality. It has some natural connection to the Supreme Lord in a personal way. So when we actually, it's nearly coming to time. So one of the things I'd really wanted to quickly touch, so when I mentioned about the personal and impersonal, as devotees, we also have to learn to be personal as well. Nowadays with the society, the temple is growing and expanding in so many ways. Right now, or even 10, 20 years ago, you remember certain devotees. 20 years later, you don't see those same devotees. And 20 years later, who knows? We may not be there as well. Because sometimes we may have committed offenses, sometimes we may have drifted away, sometimes there may have not been any care and affection for us. We really want to be in a situation where we always learn to be personal with each other. When you're in a small community, it's very personal, but as the society expands, people have different personalities, different qualities. We still have to learn to interact with one another. Sometimes on Guru Maharaj, what you'd say, don't go into a situation where you have this groupism. Sometimes you have one group for one particular guru, one group for another guru. No, we shouldn't be like that. We should be all personal, because ultimately our Jagat Guru is Srila Prabhupada, and our objective is actually to help each other go take that path to the spiritual world, take that path to Krishna again. We can't do it alone, and we need to support ourselves. And when we're personal, Rupa Goswami explains the 6 exchanges of love. Does anybody know what those 6 exchanges of love are? Palika Mataji from Rupa Goswami.
Dadati Pratiginhati. I forgot. I forgot all the Sanskrit. I think a loving exchange is that giving, receiving. What else? No, sorry. Please forgive me.
Yeah, you got one of them, offering and receiving gifts. So by offering gifts and receiving gifts, we feel happier when we actually give a gift to somebody else and receive it.
So,
Prashadam.
prashadam, yes, prashadam is the most important thing. With serving prashad and receiving prashad.
Yes. And the other one is about revealing one's.
Yeah, revealing one's mind to the others and listening from the others. Yes.
And speaking confidentially.
Yes,
Sometimes, in spiritual life, we do have difficulties. We may be changing from one one ashram to another ashram, and you may have difficulties understanding how to dovetail your life into a Krishna conscious way. So sometimes you have to reveal your mind to somebody who's more senior, somebody who's gone through that practical experiences themselves, see what we can do to help ourselves overcome those difficulties. So we have to become personal, become favorable to somebody who's very attached to Krishna, a pure devotee. As it mentions, just by moments to association with a pure devotee is considered to be even higher than attaining liberation or attaining the Vaikuntha planets. Why is that? Because the devotee, the pure devotee of the Lord, is non-different in one way to, as we mentioned, the book Bhagavat and also the devotee Bhagavat as well. Side by side allows us to get one step closer every day. Day to Krishna himself, have to become personal. If you become impersonal, then unfortunately you start drifting away, you unfortunately commit offenses, and you may not feel that same rasa, that same taste for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Your chanting may not be so positive as it used to be. Your hearing, your ability to appreciate senior devotees may be slacking as well. So apart from the spiritual aspect of attaining spiritual connection to the Supreme Lord, we also become personal to his devotees as well. As Krishna says, there's no devotee more dear to me than, or rather, there's no servant more dear to me than he, and never will there ever be one. But also specifically, Krishna says, one who claims to be my devotee is not really my devotee, or worships me, it's not my devotee. But one who worships my devotees is actually my devotee. So sometimes we may think that, well, I don't want to worship devotees because they're still materialistic or they're not fully pure. But we're not on that pure state that we can all, be on a higher level. But we help and support each other, just like a family. We all help each other at raising children in a nice environment itself. Is there any questions at all before I read the book, Our Family Business? I'll just make sure I've covered everything as well. I know I sort of spoke.
Covered very well. Covered so nicely. It's really
thank
very elaborate explanation of the verse. It's really nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Palika Mataji. Thank you. There's of course, as you know, the book marathon. Christmas time is here, so there's no better way to naturally glorify the Supreme Lord about his glorious pastimes to people who may not know or come across Krishna himself. Who knows? You may be the person that Krishna has allowed you to be, that instrument to bring that other person into Krishna consciousness. So we do want to encourage all of you going out on book distribution. I know yesterday we went out on books and Shailesh Prabhu and Hema Mataji were there, a few other devotees. Palika Mataji, she's always sponsoring so many Srimad Bhagavatam sets and books, giving it to her friends, her neighbors, her relatives. Such an amazing thing. Even though she's retired, she uses all her pension money to serve Krishna, And that's one of the qualities of a devotee. They're not just thinking about themselves, but they're thinking about the welfare of others. And that's what really allows you to feel more connected to Krishna. Krishna sees that particular devotee that they're actually detaching themselves from their welfare, their wealth, their personal attachments to homely life and giving it out to other people. So do give out a Bhagavad Gita, help out with the chapter Rishi set. It's quite easy. Go into krishnatemple.com, then / Dharma pack. It's just £15 for 7 books. Bhagavad Gita, Science of Self-Realization, the Essence book, the Higher Taste, Chant and Be Happy with George Harrison and John Lennon, Dialogues with Srila Prabhupada, and a couple of other books as well, Teachings of Queen Kunti. Such a wonderful pack, it's a gifted pack. It's just £15. Do distribute it out. And if you ever need any help, please do reach out to all the Sankirtan devotees. They'll be always happy to help you out as well. Thank you so much for listening. So what I'll do, I'll just quickly
Hare
read.
Krishna, Govinda, we just one simple request. Would
Yeah.
you be able to post the, the site where you sponsor? Because our Sangha member always sponsor Bhagavad Gita or anything. So what do I do as a Sangha leader? Collect all the donation and
Yes.
then we sponsor. If you could, if it's possible,
Yeah,
to
sure.
post it on our chat group, then I know what, because
Okay.
every year again. So thank
Okay,
you.
Palika Mataji, what it is, I won't be able to, I'll see if I
Okay.
can post it on the chat group, but I think what I'll do, if it's all right with you, I've got your number. Can I post you the link directly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
let me just see if I can get the link anyway. It may not be too hard. I could just. Okay, yeah, sure, I do have it. So what I'll do, I'll post it and I'll also send you the link as well, yeah?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Krishna Govinda, thank you.
Okay, somebody's asked a question what Shadripu means. I don't know if I actually mentioned that particular word, Shadripu. Would you be able to elaborate on that question? I think it's a question from Opita. So, yeah, I won't be able to explain that. I haven't actually come across that word, Shadripu. Okay, so what I'll do, I'm just going to read the continuation. Okay, Srila Prabhupada begins publishing. In Jhansi, before Srila Prabhupada had gone to Vrindavan, he had founded a League of Devotees, an organization meant to re-spiritualize human society, and at the request of God Brother, he had worked on the magazine Sahajana Tosani. Neither of these projects worked out at the way Srila Prabhupada wanted, but both reveal his ambitious vision. When it was handed the Sahajana Tosani project, for example, was a simple publication with a small circulation. He soon developed a plan to expand it into a world-class publication, as popular and polished as it is illustrated weekly. But the God Brother who had asked for his help, overwhelmed by Srila Prabhupada's enterprising approach, released him from the project. And that's that. Land disputes and a lack of local interest had forced Srila Prabhupada's League of Devotees in Jhansi. His plans for the project, they had not been small either. He had intended to recruit and train members to teach the Bhagavad Gita, perform Nam Sankirtan throughout the world. Undeterred by the lack of response in Jhansi and the conflicts he had endured while editing Sahajana Tosani, with no fixed income or residence and only a couple of devotees and kurtas, Srila Prabhupada soon launched his Bhakti Godhead as a magazine. The printer of Srila Prabhupada's first BTG, Kumar Jain in New Delhi, remembers that Srila Prabhupada was so poor that he usually arrived at his shop without having had a breakfast. Srila Prabhupada saved money for printing his magazine by skipping meals and walking instead of riding, hiring a rickshaw, only when it was absolutely necessary in order to carry heavy rolls of paper for printing. So can you imagine what Srila Prabhupada actually endured during a time when he was in India before he came to the West? He was so poor that he would actually skip breakfast because he didn't want to waste that money. He wouldn't even take a rickshawala or anything else at all. He wanted to use that money specifically for printing paper. How fortunate we are, what Srila Prabhupada's difficult endurance he went through just to save all the living entities of the spiritual world. Alone in New Delhi, he wrote, edited, published, and distributed back to Godhead. In the scorching heat, he personally visited government offices, shopping areas, and tea stalls to sell his magazine. Sometimes he mailed out free copies both within India and abroad. After living and preaching in Delhi for some time, Srila Prabhupada moved back to Vrindavan, but unlike other sadhus who out of fear of being contaminated vowed never to leave the holy dham, Srila Prabhupada came and went. So normally people take vows to go to Vrindavan and they make that particular vow that they would never ever leave the holy dham. So there was one particular story of, I believe, Jiva Goswami. He would never leave the holy dham, but when the great Mughal Akbar, he wanted to find out, who is greater, Narayan or Krishna. So Jiva Goswami actually left Vrindavan to go to Mathura and actually gave a nice discourse to Akbar the Great, the Muslim ruler. As with Sajjana Toshani, Srila Prabhupada's dream for back to Godhead. As with Sajjana Toshani, Srila Prabhupada's dream for back to Godhead was grand. He eventually wanted printings of back to Godhead sent to 50 countries around the world. In the midst of printing and distributing the small magazine, several people suggested that he also produce and distribute books because they were more permanent. He took this advice as coming from Krishna and wrote his first booklet, Easy Journey to Other Planets. Soon after, he began work on his Srimad Bhagavatam translations and purport. Commuting from Vrindavan to Delhi to promote his cause, Srila Prabhupada stayed in the homes of pious Hindu hosts. Sri Krishna Pandit gave him a room in Chipawada near Chandani Chowk and also volunteered to do some secretarial work for him. From those Chipawada days, Sri Krishna Pandit remembers that Srila Prabhupada was engrossed in translating and writing his commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam. He cooked for himself and typed and checked the proofs to Godhead every day. He was typing. His main activity was typing many hours a day, Sri Krishna Pandit recalls. Prabhupada had practically no financial means while living in Vrindavan and Radha Damodar. Just going back onto that typing, can you imagine in those old days when they had those big clunky typewriters, if you made a mistake, that was it. You would have to delete or rewrite the whole page. It wasn't like a word processor that we have that has automatic spell check, or we have Tipex to rub off any mistakes that we have. So we actually understand the difficulties that Srila Prabhupada went through. Srila Prabhupada had practically financial means while living in Vrindavan at the Radha Damodar Mandir. Still, he had every intention of spreading the message of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. His intense desire to do so became especially clear when he received an invitation to join the Congress for Cultivating the Human Spirit in Japan. In preparation for the event, he suspended his other projects and worked exclusively on a book he called The Light of the Bhagavat, a manuscript tailor-made for the Japanese event. So some of you may have seen that particular book, Light of the Bhagavat. It's got beautiful illustrations of Japanese art, and it's all dialogues or translations from the Bhagavat, the book Bhagavat. Simultaneously, he wrote a volley of letters appealing to the potential patrons, including India's Prime Minister, beseeching them to pay his fares to Japan so that he might attend the Congress and bring knowledge of the Bhagavat to Japan and the rest of the world. In the end, he was forced to cancel his trip, for no one gave him the money he needed, but he now had the manuscript for the Light of the Bhagavat completed. Characteristically undeterred, Srila Prabhupada continued to pray to the Lord, when will the day come when a temple will be established in every house in every corner of the world? Prahlad Maharaj, in his prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev, expresses his desire to live near big cities and towns. Unlike most transcendentalists who prefer solitude, to deliver the fallen souls who are working hard, making elaborate plans for material happiness, maintaining the families, societies, and countries. Similarly, although Srila Prabhupada referred to Vrindavan as his home, it was also the base from which, out of compassion for the fallen souls of the world, he planned his campaign to distribute Srimad Bhagavatam and the holy names of Krishna to every continent on the globe. He created a pamphlet to promote sales of his first publication of Srimad Bhagavatam. The headline of that pamphlet said, Srimad Bhagavatam, India's message of peace and goodwill. Soon Srila Prabhupada as well became the world's greatest ambassador of this message. Careful study of this pamphlet reveals much about his divine grace and indomitable spirit. He had produced only 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam, but the pamphlet advertised 60 volumes of the elaborate English version. Although he would arrive in America with no support, no connections, and no money, his pamphlet includes the words all over the world for scientific knowledge of God. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, I think this one little message, it wasn't a class today, but do you know what it means? As far as I know, there's something about the 6 traits of the mind. I would have to look into that, Orpita. I think that's your name, Orpita. I'll just have to look into it. I haven't actually come across that particular word, unless anybody in the audience, any of the participants have actually come across this word, Shadripu. Okay, I'll see if I can find out more about it, and then hopefully I'll sort of pass it to the next person who's speaking, and maybe they could mention it a little bit. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening and participating. Please forgive me for any mistakes I've made, and please accept my humble obeisances to Mancha Kalpa Tarubhyasha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Just out of interest to the message by Orpita, if you are referring to the controlling of the 6 minds, a lot of the verses are by Rupa Goswami in his Nectar of Instruction. If you do have the Bhaktivedanta page, actually this was one of the verses I was going to read quickly, the one which Palika Mataji mentioned, offering gifts, charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind and confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad and offering prasad, the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. So that's actually one of the verses, the verse 4 of the Nectar of Instruction. So in that Nectar of Instruction, there may be many topics about the 6 traits of the mind itself. Do have a look at, read of that Nectar of Instruction. If you've got the Veda base, then it's easier to go through it if you don't have the book yourself. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating in this chat class today. And please do help and support this Christmas marathon by distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, even if it's just sponsoring one book, a donation of £1. You know, you don't realize how happy Srila Prabhupada would be just by that small service. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Thank you, Govinda.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful.
Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Prabhuji. Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna. Thank you.